My name is Millie Castillo. I work for the New Jersey Child Assault Prevention CAP program. On behalf of the CAP directors and network, I would like to welcome you to empowering your children to be safe, strong, and free. This NJCAP online session follows in-person workshops for staff, parents, and guardians that recently took place in your child's school. The workshop has been tailored for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and all those who care for children and have the most influence in their lives. As a mother of 3 boys, I know that CAP reduces children's vulnerability to assault and bullying. Raising children can sometimes be difficult, but CAP helped me to understand that knowledge is power, and giving my children age-appropriate information can make them safer. Knowledge is power. This 30-minute session will challenge your knowledge about child abuse, discuss the effects of childhood trauma, overview types of abuse, give strategies to prevent abuse and bullying, explain what your student will experience in their CAP workshop, and finally, we will provide information on reporting and resources to empower your child and strengthen your family. Prevention education is the most effective way to combat child abuse. A lot of what we know about child abuse we have learned from our families or from TV or even on social media. See what you know about abuse. The next 6 statements are either true or false. To begin with, true or false? The abuse of children is a rare occurrence. The answer is false, as according to the latest report on child abuse and neglect by the U.S. Health and Human Services, 4.1 million children are reported to be maltreated annually in the United States. Recent statistics compiled by Advocates for Children of New Jersey reveal that almost 90,000 children were reported to be abused and neglected in our state in 1 year. Prevent Child Abuse America estimates that an average of 4 children every day die from child abuse and neglect in the United States. These numbers are thought to be lower than what is really happening, as it is estimated that approximately 50 to 70% of the cases of abuse go unreported. Why do you think that is? Well, the answer is that many children never tell that they are abused. Others, when asked by authorities, recant because they fear the repercussions. And still others are not believed when they do tell. According to the Child Welfare League study on how children disclose, 22% of all children who disclose sexual abuse end up recanting. Our second statement is, boys, like girls, can be targeted for sexual abuse. Is that true or false? The answer is true. For years, many people thought only girls were sexually exploited, but national data reveals that while 1 in 3 to 4 girls will be assaulted sometime before they turn 18 years old, 1 in 5 to 7 boys will be sexually assaulted before the age of 18. Although more girls disclose sexual assault, it is wondered if boys may be experiencing as much abuse, but because of fear of being looked as less masculine, boys may not disclose as readily. Today, we see more men disclosing the sexual abuse that happened to them as children. The hashtag #MeToo movement has included men as well as women, and some of those abuses included perpetration against boys by professionals in the fields of sports, entertainment, religion, and more. Our third statement is, most children are assaulted by strangers. Is that true or false? The answer is false. We would like to believe that most crimes and assaults against children are committed by strangers, but studies have indicated as many as 85% of all offenders are known to the child. Within this group, many of the victims had not only a trusting, but also a loving relationship with those who assaulted them. Offenders include parents, step-parents, teachers, scout leaders, babysitters, etc. These are people with interaction and power over a child. It is difficult to accept the concept that offenders come from among our own family, neighbors, and acquaintances. Perhaps we focus on the stranger because it's less painful to deal with and easier to tell our children about. Unfortunately, most people would like to think that all they need is a list of the registered sex offenders in their area. By warning their children about these known perpetrators, families often believe that will keep their children safe from danger. But the reality is there are many individuals who are attracted to children that have never been identified or prosecuted, so they are not known to any authorities. The fact that most offenders are not strangers even furthers the importance of training children with strategies to protect themselves. Our fourth statement is, children lie about sexual abuse. Is that true or false? The answer is false. For a child to lie about sexual abuse is rare, and according to the National Victim Center report, it constitutes only 0.5% of the unfounded reports. We need to remember that children cannot create information about something they have not personally experienced. If they are given details about a sexual interaction, we need to ask where did they get those details. More likely, children will not tell anyone about the abuse and keep it a secret. The reason is that they are afraid that the offender will hurt them physically or hurt their mom or siblings, that the abuser will go to jail and leave the non-abusing parent without money or a place to live. Or if they tell, no one will believe them, and somehow they will be blamed for the abuse, and it will become an even worse situation. When children come to us for help, we need to believe them. It is not our place to conduct investigations, but to report it to the authorities and let them conduct the investigation. Children in our lives need to see us as their trusted adults. The fifth statement is, most victims, when they grow up, will become an abuser. Is that true or false? The answer is false. For those who have suffered childhood abuse, it is great to know that the majority of individuals who have been abused as children do not become child abusers, as noted by the American Professional Society on the Abuse of Children. While many abusers were abused as children, according to research conducted by Ziegler and Kaufman at Yale, only 33% of all those who are assaulted will actually go on to abuse other children. The majority, 66% of all adults who were abused as children, will go on to being adults who will be great parents and are supportive of children. Many of those who are abused go on to advocating and preventing the abuse of children. A really important quote for us to remember regarding the resiliency of those who are abused comes from the author Ernest Hemingway, who wrote, "The world breaks everyone, and then some become strong at the broken places." Our sixth and final statement is, the internet and cell phones has brought more opportunities for abuse and exploitation of children. Is that true or false? The answer is true. The anonymous nature of the internet and cell phone messaging has increased the predator's arena of victimization of children and teens. The Kaiser Foundation found 1 in 5 children ages 10 to 17 received sexual solicitation in a 1-year period over the internet. The U.S. Department of Justice reports that 1 in 5 students who are either gaming or in other chat formats have been approached by pedophiles seeking sexual encounters with children and teens. The problem of sexting, which is electronically sending sexually explicit photos to others, has increased because of the use of cell phones. Underage sexting is illegal, but has also increased and has contributed to bullying. Sextortion is when adults threaten or bribe children and or teens so they can use their sexually explicit photos for pornography and other types of abuse. Now, more than ever, prevention education training is essential for young people everywhere. Sometimes children don't tell us with words they are experiencing trauma, they show us. A change in a child's behavior could be due to the stress of being abused and can alert a sensitive and caring adult that there is a problem. Knowing both the physical and behavioral clues to abuse can help adults intervene on behalf of children. Let's talk briefly about the types of abuse and their effects on children. What is neglect? Neglect occurs when parents, guardians purposely withhold necessities that children need to survive, such as food, clothing, shelter, medical attention, and affection. It is important to remember there is a difference between poverty and neglect. Poverty is when the parent or guardian is unable to financially provide the things necessary for the child's well-being. Neglect is when the parent or guardian can provide the necessities but chooses not to. Child abuse is relentlessly democratic and crosses all racial, ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic lines. Emotional abuse is when a parent or guardian consistently humiliates, embarrasses, teases, and is generally indifferent to a child's emotional needs. Emotional abuse seems to be the most pervasive and damaging type of abuse children may experience over the long term. It usually accompanies physical and sexual abuse, but every child who is emotionally abused is not necessarily physically or sexually abused. The core belief that drives emotional abuse is the disrespect for the rights of children. Depression, fearfulness, phobias, chronic ailments, lack of spontaneity, and creativity are all common in emotionally abused children. 80% of children who engage in inflicting injuries on themselves have been in abusive situations. Eating disorders such as bulimia and anorexia are becoming increasingly evident in young children. Also, irritable bowel syndrome or IBS has become one of the leading chronic gastrointestinal disorders related to stress, replacing ulcers in both children and adults. Suicidal ideation or thoughts of suicide, animal abuse, and fire setting are also strongly correlated with child abuse. Physical abuse displays the most obvious symptoms of abuse. Although parents and guardians have the right to discipline children, discipline can cross the line and become abusive if a parent or guardian purposely inflicts injury other than through accidental means. This could happen if children are being hit in the face or head, if implements are being used, and if lasting marks are evident. Perhaps the best thing to keep in mind for bruises, burns, and continuing injuries is to ask yourself if the injury fits the story the child is telling you. A child with electric burner marks on the palms of both hands did not accidentally touch the stove. A child with belt buckle marks doesn't get them by accident. Sexual assault is forced sexual contact. It is a crime of violence and may include rape, incest, molestation, exhibitionism, voyeurism, pornography, sexual exploitation, and or trafficking. Do you think you would be able to recognize a child who is sexually abused? It's important to know what some indicators may be. An age-inappropriate interest or knowledge of sexual acts may indicate exploitation from an older child or adult. Let's talk a bit about nightmares. Most children and many adults have them. A nightmare becomes a concern when it is repetitive and involving the same situation. It might indicate that there is a problem the child is trying to deal with. Any regression in behavior, thumb-sucking, bedwetting, or bowel accidents could be an indicator of abuse or other trauma. Some children who are abused may become overly compliant, while others become aggressive, acting out in school and other social settings. Or they may exhibit an unusual fear of a particular person or family member. And lastly, They may self-injure and act out with alcohol, drugs, reckless behavior, and even suicidal ideation. So how can we reduce trauma and victimization of children? By identifying factors that lend to children's vulnerability. These factors are the lack of information. Sometimes we as parents are afraid we might frighten or confuse our children, so we limit the information we give them. We need to remember that information about anything makes us less vulnerable and less fearful. Many parents teach their children to wear seatbelts and to feel for a hot door in case of fire, to know a safe exit from the house, and to stop, drop, and roll in case they catch on fire. Yet each year, more children are reported victims of abuse and neglect than from all the fires and motor vehicle accidents combined. We need to teach them by letting them know they have rights to a safe body and mind, and by giving them age-appropriate information on what to do if they feel unsafe. Let's look at this in more detail. The information that we give does not have to be frightening in its realism, but can be presented in a way that makes children feel in control of what happens to them. In order to teach a child to protect himself, it is not necessary to frighten him. Children need positive strategies that encourage strength and non-victimization of children. With positive and empowering information, our children can face a potentially dangerous, life-threatening situation with little or no stress or fear. Children need to be careful, not fearful. We need to empower children. Children need to know they have a right to a safe body and that no adult has unqualified authority over their body. Giving other adults an opportunity to have unquestioned authority over children can put them in a very difficult position. For example, what if we tell them, "Mommy and Daddy are going out. We will be very late. It has been a long time since we went out. We don't want any trouble here. Do you understand? Do whatever the babysitter tells you to do." Now, what if the babysitter asks them to do something inappropriate? Will they do it? Understanding what we do about assaults against children, understanding who the offenders often are, and understanding how literally children can interpret statements, what message has been left here? Very innocently and unknowingly, the parent has given the babysitter unqualified authority. The final phase in reducing the vulnerability of children is to lessen their isolation. They basically think of other children as someone to play with. CAP encourages children to be there for each other. Children need to share their experiences, just as we do. They need to share with each other. Sometimes children depend emotionally, economically, and physically on the same people from which their offenders are drawn. Their very dependency increases their vulnerability to abuse. We need to increase the number of people our children can go to for help at school, in the community, and at home, who are there for them if they need help or have a problem. It is important to teach them to reach out to people who care, both adults and other children. In addition to identifying a victim of abuse, it is also important to know what to say or how to react to what a child has told you when they are being abused. One of the most valuable messages we offer children is to go to an adult they trust if they have a problem. That trusted adult is defined as anyone who will listen, believe them, and then assist them in solving the problem. If you are the person a child considers to be his or her trusted adult, that is both a privilege and a compliment. These guidelines may help you to know what to say and how to react to a child who discloses abuse or neglect. You may be the only person this child opens up to. What you do next is key. 1. Always be calm. Your reaction makes a difference. Children are sensitive to adults. If they see that the information they are giving is upsetting us, they may stop sharing. Children who are frightened need our calm and reassuring words and actions. 2. Believe what you're hearing. Too often, children lack credibility. Listen to the child in a non-judgmental way. 3. Use the child's language. A child may use explicit terms to discuss his or her experience. Be prepared. Try and use the same language also. 4. Do not avoid embarrassing subjects. Let the child know that he or she can talk about anything that concerns him or her. Explicit language and embarrassing subjects are difficult for some people to hear. However, as we said earlier, a child who senses your discomfort may just stop talking. 5. Do not project or assume anything. Let the child tell the story and leave your own assumptions out. 6. To assess a child's safety needs. Assessing the child's safety must always be a priority. Can she go home? Is he in danger? That decision has to be reached before any other action is taken. 7. To validate the child's feelings. We all need this, whether we are children or adults. It's so important to let children know we understand how they feel, especially when what they are saying is so frightening for them. 8. To assure the child that you care, that you're there for them, that you are still a friend, that the child is not to blame. It is a terrible burden for a child to bear blame which does not belong to him. Many survivors of childhood abuse have told us, if even one person had said it was not my fault, my whole life would have been different. 9. To let the child know he or she has a right to be safe. Children need to see that the right to be safe is as essential as their right to eat, sleep, and have shelter. Children need to hear from someone they trust that hurting children is unacceptable. 10. To let the child know what action you will take. You can tell him what you will do. This is not only the proper thing to do, it is also the most ethical procedure to follow. It is also important to let the child know that if the situation does not change, they need to come back and let you know. In New Jersey, any person having reasonable cause to believe that a child has been subjected to abuse or acts of abuse should immediately report this information to the State Central Registry, SCR. If the child is in immediate danger, call 911 as well as 1-877-NJ-ABUSE, 1-877-652-2873. Failure to report when such a suspicion occurs may carry a charge of up to $1,000 fine and or 6 months in jail. Any person who in good faith makes a report of child abuse or neglect or testifies in a child abuse hearing resulting from such a report is immune from any criminal or civil liability as a result of such action. When a report indicates that a child may be at risk, an investigator from the Division of Child Protection and Permanency, DCP&P, will promptly investigate the allegations of child abuse and neglect. Besides the staff in-service and the parent workshop, we will be offering your children a workshop. It is important for you to know about the children's workshop, as research indicates that when the parents and guardians reinforce the strategies of CAP in the home, children have greater retention and are more likely to use what they have learned. The program is approximately an hour, with a half hour for review of the strategies. The workshop is based on a peer education model, and all information is age-appropriate and has a fun and upbeat approach to the subject of self-protection. Children find the workshop interesting and like to learn more about keeping safe. The first part of the program talks about personal safety rights. What are some basic rights? What happens if someone takes those rights away? Then, the CAP facilitators act out a role play in which a child is successfully bullied. When it is over, the children brainstorm about what was wrong in the role play and how can the rights be protected in the future. After a guided group discussion, the role play is repeated using their suggestions and with a more positive outcome. Role plays deal with 3 types of assault: peer aggression, bullying, stranger abduction, and assault by someone the child knows. Throughout the workshop, we teach children the importance of self-assertiveness, peer support, and telling someone. These 3 strategies are reinforced in each role play in order to let children be empowered to know how to keep themselves safe, strong, and free. Let's review this session and discuss points that you will want to remember. 1. Children are rarely sexually assaulted. True or false? You're right. The answer is false. National statistics support the fact that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 5 boys will be sexually assaulted before they reach the age of 18. This includes all forms of sexual behaviors, not only rape. Children are assaulted everywhere. In over half the cases, the assault takes place in either the home of the victim or the home of the offender. 2. Children are more likely to be assaulted by strangers. True or false? You're right. The answer is false. 85 to 95% of the cases, the child not only knows, but usually has a loving or trusting relationship with that person. 3. It is rare for a child to lie about sexual abuse. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. Children traditionally lie to get out of trouble, not into it. More often than not, children's disclosures of sexual abuse are more about courage than lying. We need to believe children. 4. Adults have unqualified authority over children. True or false? You're right. The answer is false. Adults do not have the authority to exploit or abuse a child. 5. Lack of information can increase a child's vulnerability to assault. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. Information about anything makes us less vulnerable and less fearful. In order to teach children to protect themselves, they need age-appropriate strength-based information. 6. Spanking your child is not the best method of discipline. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. Although discipline is a part of parenting, the use of spanking or hitting does not teach your child how to control or self-regulate themselves. It also can escalate and possibly become abusive. Children who experience repeated use of corporal punishment tend to develop more aggressive behaviors toward others and or self-harming behaviors to themselves. There are many other options for parenting which are relationship-oriented and strength-based. Resources to follow. 7. The majority of survivors of assault go on to lead productive lives. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. Less than 33% of those who are assaulted repeat the behavior. The vast majority of over 66% go on to leading productive lives, often helping others. 8. Tell a child that has disclosed abuse that what has happened is not their fault. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. A child that has suffered an abusive situation needs to know that it's not their fault and acknowledge the courage that it took to open up and share the secret. 9. It is not against New Jersey law to fail to report suspected abuse and neglect. True or false? You're right. The answer is false. Any person who knowingly fails to report suspected abuse or neglect is in violation of state law and, more importantly, puts a child at risk. 10. One of the biggest problems children say they have is that no one listens to them. True or false? You're right. The answer is true. Being a good listener and a trusted adult is probably the most important thing we can do for our own children and the children of our community. We would like to thank you for taking the time to participate in this online workshop. We hope it provided information and support to strengthen you, your family, and community. The following are a list of resources from NJCAP website and other parenting and community groups. We wish you and your family to be safe, strong, and free.